Hey everybody, it's Kevin Grolig here, and we are live streaming tonight on YouTube and on Facebook from the DMV, where everything's going freaking bananas here. You got Doge, you got Elon, you got Trump, you got all sorts of crazy stuff going on, and we're going to discuss it all tonight. Also, we have some other kind of big news within the real estate market. First we're going to talk a little bit about the DC market. What's going on here with all the turmoil and chaos that seems to be going on locally in our area. We're also going to be discussing kind of some of the big news that's going on within the real estate market. We've had two large mergers and acquisitions over the last week. One was, we found out last week that Keller Williams sold a stake of their company to a private equity firm. I believe it's Stone Point. And the belief is that they probably will be taking the company public at some point in time. And also, we just heard a few days ago that Redfin ended up selling to Rocket. So all sorts of craziness going on, all sorts of mergers, acquisitions, and things going on. And tonight, I've got a really special guest. I've got Holly Worthington. She is the regional VP and principal broker for the DC area for Compass. She's actually my boss, so hopefully I don't say anything too freaking stupid that will get me in trouble. Anyways, with all that being said, let's go ahead and I'll introduce you to Holly Worthington.
Hey, Kevin, you're fired. Oh, just kidding. Just kidding.
All right, everybody, we're cutting this short. Looks like I got, you know what? I'm getting a call from Redfin right now.
Right. Kevin's the best. If you're listening to this, he's amazing. So thank you. I was joking.
That's all right. That's all right. Because, I feel like, every now and then you're teeter-tottering on the edge. But anyways, hey, first of all, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're really busy, and with all the craziness that's going on in the DC area, I'm sure that you've got a lot on your plate. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Happy to. I love talking more than you do.
Not much, but I would agree with that. Yes. I would agree that you are very good at, which makes you an awesome guest. So, we talked a little bit backstage. I mean, I work in the Montgomery County market, I'm licensed in Virginia, but, the Montgomery County market is really my market. But, you're managing 1,600 agents. From where to where is your area?
Richmond to Baltimore. So, and everything in between, and Montgomery County and all around the Beltway. And so we pretty much cover the market. So if there's shifts in the market, they're easy to see for me. And I also get a lot of information just from the questions that agents ask me and the managers ask, because I can see what the concerns are in the market that way. So it's pretty much real-time feedback.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of why I wanted to have you on, because, like I say, I'm kind of operating my own little small world with my clients and people that are, thinking about selling, thinking about buying. Obviously, I work in the Park Potomac office. So, pretty involved with a lot of our meetings there. So you kind of get a feel of the pulse of what's going on there. But, I also know that, you're watching and talking to a lot more people than I am. So that's kind of why I wanted to have you on, just to kind of find out what was going on there. So why don't we first start with, tell us a little bit about you and kind of how you got in the business, where you started, when did you come to Compass, kind of go over all that with us.
So I started in real estate when I was 28. That's about 41 years ago, for anyone that wants to add the math up and see that I'm old and wise. Just kidding.
I always sucked at math, which is,
Yeah. Thank you. Let's not get to weight here. Okay. So anyway, I was an agent for 9 years. I was at Long & Foster for a total of 31 years. So I sold real estate right here in the DMV, and then became a manager. So I started managing in 1992, and I found helping people have a better life, whether it was my own agents or our clients, was really my passion in life. My father, his father, and his father were in real estate in DC.
Wow.
So he had a real estate brokerage. And so I come from a long line of real estate agents, but my family's pretty crazy, which I inherited, of course. And they didn't talk about real estate much. So I just found myself, after going to college and almost majoring in French or computer science or anthropology. I majored in anthropology, and I ended up in real estate. So go figure. But I love it. Because it's people development. My end of it is people development, and it's solving problems.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and you know what's interesting is, and we're really not going to hit this topic. At least I don't think we are. But every now and then, you never know with questions that come in. You know, you were at a meeting in our office about a week or two ago, and just talking about all the things you do with just kind of, you know, things that happen, whether that be, you know, issues that come up, you know, with potential lawsuits, arbitration, mediation. I mean, these things happen when you work with the public and everything. And oftentimes it's a he said, she said, he said, whatever. But I was actually fascinated by how much you actually enjoy like getting involved with that stuff, because, you know, and that right there is a rare quality, and possibly even a little bit of a sick quality, but
well, that's the jury's back on that one. I actually find helping people understand who don't understand,
right,
and to help them calm down and have a better life, to be a pleasure. And I think everybody needs an advocate. Sometimes it's our clients, sometimes it's my agents that need an advocate. I found that the angst in the market increased after the election, and there was more concern. So I think the level of complaints or concerns or demands or whatever that I might hear from the public increases when there's more anxiety in the market and in the world, just in general. So it's a fascinating job just to see what people's perspectives are. And you really, I think, get insight into what people care about. And some people care about some things that really they shouldn't care about. It's not for me to tell someone what to care about, but some of the stuff people get in a knot about is really not something they're going to remember 2 weeks from now, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Agreed. And a lot of times what I see is that, you know, oftentimes, and I fortunately, I've been with Compass now since 2019, so it's 6 years. I don't think I've ever had you've ever had to deal with any of my transactions.
No, I haven't. No.
Which is a good thing. So we don't talk that much, which is probably a good thing, because if you're talking to me pretty frequently, that's probably not a good thing.
Right.
But, you know, of course, you know, once again, in working with the public and everything, and this is a business very much where, you know, what do they say? I believe that the three most stressful things in life are death, divorce, and moving, you know, and sometimes with the whole moving thing, you're dealing with one of those other things too. Either they're selling because of a divorce or selling because of a death or something like that. So oftentimes you get two of the big three, you know, in life, all combined in one transaction. So
I've had, you know, Kevin, in the last 6 weeks, I've had 3 cases where a husband and wife were getting divorced. And one of them was so angry at the other one, they wouldn't sign the settlement papers. And everyone thought the case wasn't going to go to settlement. And these poor buyers are out here flapping around trying to figure out whether they can buy the house, whether they're going to have anywhere to live. And it was just people fighting because it was just flat out hatred. And sometimes you just go, wow, let it go. You know what I mean? But, you know, you never know what this backstory is, and people get mad for some good reasons, I suppose. But I think
but what I find is, even, you know, some of the people that are the most frustrated, because gosh knows I've certainly dealt, you know, it's, you know, hasn't escalated to the level of you having to get involved. Thank goodness. But at the same time, you know, obviously we deal with a lot of things that go on along the way that oftentimes we can solve ourselves, but really more than often, more these are like really, let's be honest, like really first world issues in 90% of the cases, where it's just like, if you just look back and you look at what's going on in this world, you know, outside of our little bubble, maybe in this area or out, you know, in other parts of the country or just, you know, other parts of the world. I mean, usually these are, I mean, that's what I look at. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is absolutely nothing in comparison to, you know.
Well, that's true. And I think most real estate agents, especially you, have a good life perspective about that. I also think people don't really understand that real estate agents try to sniff out fraud. They try to detect buyers that aren't real, that might ratify a contract and then never supply the earnest money, or really take a seller's property off the market for quite some time while they mess around with everyone. And so a real estate agent's job is to do the best they can to figure out some of those things. We can't always succeed at that, but we sure try. And so I think the things we do to take care of people are pretty pretty unknown. I don't think people really realize what some of what we deal with. I could tell stories for about 3 weeks on here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like the back of my car is always filled with other people's crap and in their house.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I went today to a house that we just had recently, not renovated, but just spruced up and kind of tidied up for the marketplace. And I mean, taking, just the crap that I have in the back of my car, you don't see that. Like I said, you don't see that on like whatever that show is, Selling Sunset.
No.
So whenever I talk to, and okay, I'll say it, whenever I talk to any of like the Gen Z or young millennials who are like thinking about getting into real estate, typically that's really their idea of what this business is. And it's like hot tubs and Ferraris. And I'm like, dude, like I've been doing this for 35 years. I've been looking for it the whole time and I haven't found it yet,
Right. Well, it's like we're out planting the pansies in the front garden or sweeping the house or, I sold a house one time in Northwest DC that smelled so terrible that I really literally couldn't sit in it for the open house, but we got a great offer. I mean, you just have to price it appropriately, but everybody's, they live their lives. But anyway, I didn't finish. I was at Long & Foster for 31 years. And then I went to Compass when Compass came to the market. And I thought this is a very forward thinking company. And I thought it would be the right place for me. And it really has turned out to be the right place. And we've helped grow it with only the best agents like you, Kevin, decent, honest, kind people, and have #1 market share around our market. So I'm really, really delighted with how hard everyone works. We have the hardest working agents. So that sounds very braggy, but I honestly believe that. And I care whether people are honest and kind. And I think it really matters. So
thank you. And there's one thing that I'm going to say, and then we'll move on to the marketplace. But, when I first joined, I remember, the company, and I worked at Long & Foster. I used to like to tell people that I worked for a knockoff company called Fong & Loster. But
Long and Prosper.
But I worked for Long & Foster. I have nothing bad to say about,
No, of course.
Love the people there and everything. But what was interesting is, when I was, recruited to come here, I'd heard of Compass, but I thought it was like a small boutique firm in DC, had no idea what was really going on behind the scenes. And when I saw what was really going on behind the scenes, I'm like, holy cow. Like, I'm the guy who's always got like I've always got like the iPhone 9 or something like that. I'm always 3 or 4 or 6 generations behind on the iPhone. I'm always like, buying the one that's 2 or 3 generations below just to save some bucks. So I'm not one of these guys who's constantly chasing the new shiny thing. Which was very unlike me to join Compass because, when I saw it, I mean, I really I had no idea, but I'm like, oh my gosh, this company is going to be taking over this marketplace here is so clear to me. And I'm like, do I wait another year or 2, 3 years to see what? And I'm like, I ended up joining. But last thing I'm going to just say is that's actually not where I was going. I had a Compass, actually some of our agent, what do we call them? We would call them recruiter, but I know that we don't call them recruiters. What do we call them?
SGMs, strategic growth manager.
Thank you. I forgot. Our strategic growth managers, I've actually had them come to me and asking me, and these are agents who are major producers in the marketplace who they've come to me asking me about certain agents, and I'm just giving them my honest opinion of them. And I've seen us turn down people that, like once again, are major players in the marketplace, but just over, issues where they thought that there would be a cultural difference, which is impressive because, most companies it's like, hey, if you're producing big numbers and everything like that, it's a little bit like sometimes star athletes where it's like, you can oversee some stuff because they're just a freaking star. But, I have to say that was really impressive with this company that they've actually turned away some top agents just because it wasn't a good culture fit.
I think the culture is the most important thing in any company. And I think having people that are kind and thoughtful, and that doesn't mean perfect, but people that care about other people it's critical because if anyone makes a mistake, all they can do is care if they fix it. Right. And if you have a person who makes a mistake and doesn't care if they fix it, that's very dangerous for all the parties, all the clients in the transaction. And I think it just really matters if people care what they think. I think in the world in general, it matters. And so I'm very grateful to have the culture we have here. And I'm grateful that we also have fun, and you're the king of fun. So you get that.
um, so let's kind of dive into the DMV market. 2 or 3 weeks back, we saw all these, hysterical things coming out on like X and TikTok. Most of them I found out were for like 16 or 17-year-olds who are making these videos in their parents' basement, talking about how just inventory was exploding on the market. The market is tanking. Values have dropped 30% in the last 6.5 hours or something. I mean, it was all this doomsday stuff. I did a live stream kind of debunking all of this with stats and facts. I saw other agents with Compass and other agents with other companies kind of coming out and doing similar videos. But that was like 3 weeks ago. So why don't you kind of take me? Well, I brought the receipts. So I've got some receipts, and we'll talk about that today. But what are you hearing throughout the marketplace? Because once again, you're looking at a much broader area than I really am.
Sure. Well, it's disappointing that people post trash on social media, or that the media prints or goes online with stuff information that's clearly impossible to be true. Obviously, if someone has been told, someone's a government worker and they've been told that they're going to get laid off, they don't go home and put their house on the market. That's just not what people do. It's not reasonable. So if you do lose your job, what you usually do is talk to your significant other or talk to yourself and say, do I want to stay here? If you've got kids in school there, you're not going to go anywhere. If your spouse is working or your partner is working there, they're probably not going to give their job up. Most people don't make a decision to move out of the area because they lost their job. They think about it, think about where else they want to work, or can they work remotely somewhere, or what are they doing? So the whole idea of there being an exodus of people from the DMV over these layoffs, and that the idea that it was happening immediately was a joke. And I find it kind of shocking that anyone believed it for 2 minutes, because that's just not how people act. Now, there were some people who were planning to retire, maybe move to the Carolinas or Florida or wherever they were moving, and who were probably ready to move, and they got offered a package to retire, and they went, okay. So, but even those people would have been waiting to pack their house up, get it ready, Right. So I don't think the impact on this market is, I'll tell you what I think the impact is in a second, but at this time, I can't predict the future, but I think the impact has been very minimal. This has been a very inventory shy market. That's true all the way from Baltimore all the way to Richmond. Some parts of the market, very small segments of the market, have too much inventory. That would be the DC condo market in some areas of that market, not all of it. So some of them are really, some of those markets have hovered toward being a buyer's market where the buyer can call the shots. But most other parts of the market are not. What isn't moving in any market is something that's overpriced, something that doesn't show well, unless it's really priced low for what it is, or something that just looks horrible and needs so much repair that the only person that's going to buy it is an investor or developer, and it needs to be priced attractively for them to make money on it. And so most younger people now, this, Kevin, they are in a visual society now with social media, and they want everything to be perfect when they move in. They don't want to spend time fixing things up. There are so many opportunities to create equity for some young people by buying things that need work and that don't look good. But that said, we've had such a dearth of inventory, and we've needed more inventory for so long. There are probably 11 buyers for every house, that having new inventory come in, which it does every year in the spring, and the inventory is up very slightly year over year, that I think we're all in a good spot. I'll talk in a minute about what I think could happen, a little more in a second.
So I saw this article that came up recently. I mean, I think it just came up yesterday. Here we are, about more DC area home buyers are backing out. Bad for the seller, but a second chance for the buyer. And I'm not going to read all of it, but basically, in kind of skimming through it, what it says is that in the month of January, that 1 out of 8 home sales that occurred in the DMV. Now, I'm not sure if this is just DC or the greater DMV area, which covers quite a bit. backed out of contracts. What it states in there, of course, your first thought when you hear this is, oh my gosh, people are freaking out. They're losing jobs and everything, and they need to get out of the contracts. But actually, one of the things the article said, which probably has a little bit of a validity to it, is that, because the market may be softening some, we're starting to see more home inspections on properties where, let's be honest, for the better part of the last 4.5, 5 years, I mean, I would say the strong majority of the homes I sold, probably easily 75%, if not closer to 90% of the homes I sold, did not have an actual home inspection contingency. Maybe there was a pre-inspection of some sort that was done, which would make some sense. But I guess my question to you is, once again, you're talking to all the managers, you're talking to you're dealing with over 1,600 agents. Are you starting to see a trend of people backing out of contracts and more homes going back on the market after they've gone pending?
No, I'm not. And there are a couple things in that article that I think are incorrect. And I think that is a large geography, because statistically, the DMV, as far as the census goes, and National Association of Realtors and some of the data, includes West Virginia, and that's a completely different market. So I think it's not an urban market, generally speaking. So I think that number one, the MLS data doesn't accurately reflect all the transactions in the market. There are so many transactions, probably 15 to 18% of the transactions in the market are not in the MLS. And it depends on how swift the market is. The swifter the market, and the more it's a seller's market, and things are flying off the market, the more likely a property is to be sold off of MLS. So you won't see the data. So to say that you're seeing things fly, get ratified and then get unratified on a contract, buy or pull out, I don't think there is really accurate data, except for within a single brokerage. The person commenting on that in the article was the chief economist at Redfin. And she has said, and Redfin certainly would have their own data, but if you are statistically a much tinier percentage of the market, your data from your own brokerage only won't be compelling. It's not, it may be wrong. There's other information in the article about earnest money deposits being small, and that you could put up as little as $1,000 to get a property under contract if you're a buyer. That's just not true anywhere in the market we work in. That may be true somewhere where home prices are less expensive, but it's just not the case. Most sellers won't take their house off the market for a buyer that's put up less than 1% of the purchase price. So that's just not a thing. So I think that I am not seeing people pull out of the market. What I have seen, and I asked the agents, I hope I'm not talking too much, Kevin.
No, please keep going. I'm going to wind you up.
Yeah. What I am seeing is, I asked the agents a couple of weeks ago, 2 different sales meetings. There's about 300 agents altogether. And in this time where government layoffs are occurring and different departments are being closed, and you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's a very chaotic administration, right? So at that time, which is 3 weeks ago, which is 20 years ago in Trump time, right? I asked the agents, how many of you seen an impact? Have you seen buyers or sellers, your clients, withdraw from their search or from putting their house on the market? And almost half of the agents in both of those sales meetings said, yes, they've seen people say, I'm going to wait and see. So the whole narrative, Kevin, of people putting their house on the market and flooding the market with inventory, the exact opposite is happening. People are going, I'm going to wait. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I don't think that is happening. I do, the unemployment figures for DC are higher than they were. They've gone up week over week. That's a new trend that we hadn't seen before. So I think there will certainly be impact. But are all those people homeowners? Are all those people that need to sell? Did they have their kids in school? Were they retiring? What's their story? Probably 1 out of 8 of the people, and I made that number up, but just a gut check, 1 out of 8 of the people that are getting laid off will need to move, or will think about moving. I just don't think it's everybody. So I don't think it's going to be significant.
Yeah. And, the other thing too, that I had mentioned a few weeks back on our live stream was that, first of all, you have a lot of, 2-income households, number one. I think the strong majority of these people probably have 3 to 4% interest rates on their property. So they wouldn't be able to even rent something for as little as they're paying on their mortgage.
Yeah.
And then the other thing which is really, noticeable too, is like I did some statistics on Montgomery County, DC, as well as Fairfax, Virginia. And in the month of February, of all the home sales that occurred in Montgomery County, I believe it was 27% of all the sales. And once again, you brought up a great point. You brought up a great point about there's a lot of that goes on that's not on the market, that's not really being tracked through MLS. But let's just kind of stick to the MLS just for now. But 27% of the sales that occurred in the month of February were cash deals. 19% were cash, or actually 19% were in cash deals in Fairfax, and I think 27% were in DC. And, I don't know about you. Like I've been in the business almost as long as you have.
We're close.
I had more cash deals in the last 5 years than I had the first 30,
much more,
25, 30 years I had all together. And so, there's a lot of people who are sitting on paid off homes right now.
That's right.
And if they're not paid off, a lot of them have very low interest rates in the 3 to 4% range. And once again, really couldn't rent something for any cheaper than what they own. So to your point there, but, I do want to kind of bring up some of the statistics because, I also like keeping it real here too, and not saying like, hey, everything's great, everything's perfect.
Yeah.
Definitely seeing a trend. I mean, tell me if you're seeing this too, where things are softening some, but what I find is, of course, when people hear that I'm in the real estate business, they're always asked like, how's the market? And of course, my question is always going to be like, okay, what location are you? Right. Are you inside or outside the Beltway? What, townhouse, condo, single family, what school district are you in? All those type of things, because what I'm finding is especially in Montgomery County, there's areas that are still incredibly hot that really don't seem to have calmed down much from, crazy times. And then there's areas which not so much, where it's definitely more of a balanced market. But overall, would you say that you're seeing things soften some in, early spring?
Yes, I think that's true. But I also think the word for what's going on right now is wonky. And I know that's a funny way to say it, but I think that there are properties on the market that some agents would have thought would have flown off the market that haven't. And then there are other properties that are getting multiple offers and bid way up. And so it's sometimes a little harder to predict in a market like this because you never know if your property that you're listing, if you're a seller, is going to be right in that niche where the people who would have bought it are people that are concerned about what the government's doing. And I'll talk about the concern for the economy in a minute. I didn't really get to that, but I think that the market has softened a little bit, but the truth of it is we are still so inventory shy in almost every category that there's just not enough housing for humanity in the United States, period.
Yeah. True. So I brought the receipts. I brought the stats with me. So I looked it up today. Actually, this data comes from Showing Time, which and so once again, I think it's pretty accurate. But once again, it does not account for off-market activity, which we might get into a little bit later here. But Montgomery County, as of March 1st, so that was a week and a half ago, there were 1,049 properties on the market in every price point: condos, single families, townhouses. At the same time last year, that we had 705 properties on the market. So, that's showing an increase of 49%, which is pretty large, but yet still we're talking about a county that has over 1 million residents. I mean, you're talking about, just over 1,000 homes on the market, where you have a market or once again, a county that has, I think it's 1,060,000 residents. So remarkably
low inventory. It's still really low inventory. And so even you can say, well, the inventory is higher, but if you're not comparing the amount of inventory to the number of contract transactions in a month, you can't really gauge the absorption rate. And the absorption rate is what tells you, it compares, as you know, the contract activity to the inventory. You can say, oh, inventory is up, but that number alone means nothing. Right. If you've got buyers coming out of the woodwork, then even an increase in inventory might not be enough. But if you don't have any buyers, because everyone's afraid they're going to lose their job, your inventory could go up and it could be a disaster. So it completely depends on the two at the same time. And each segment, as you know, Kevin, each segment of the market's very different. You could pull up a little condo, in Rockville and find that it's not moving, but another condo that has outdoor space in Rockville might be moving, or some townhouse that's in a neighborhood where there are 8 other ones on the market might not move, but another one that's in a neighborhood where there's very little on the market might move quickly. So it's very specific. You know that.
Yeah. So right now, Montgomery County, we're looking at about 1.8 months worth of inventory. And, most economists would say that, I think most economists say 5 to 6 months worth of inventory does, really kind of is more of a buyer's market. So when we're talking about less than 2 months worth of inventory, we're still talking a market that heavily favors sellers. However, once again, I will say that probably there were at points in time where we had well less than a month's worth of inventory, which is definitely a market that favors sellers. So, my take, at least on Montgomery County, is where it used to be like a pendulum. It used to be like this, and now it's probably a little bit more like that. And of course, certain areas are still like this, and other areas may be more like this. So,
can I add something? You talked about, just try telling me no, right?
I'm not even gonna go there.
Good luck, right? I think instead of contracts falling out, which is what that article referred to, buyers ratifying contracts and then changing their mind, what I'm seeing more is a property that needs work. A buyer may do a pre-offer inspection, or they just look at the property and see it needs work, and they're just not even interested in it. I find that happens. And so a property that has a flaw, meaning it smells like cigarette smoke, or, the kitchen's old and in disrepair. You can have an old kitchen that's really retro and cool, but most old kitchens are not. So
right.
Purple carpeting or, any of those things that make people not interested. People just aren't willing to do the work.
So, Holly, we have a question here. Aaron asks, Holly, can you share your thoughts on how the lack of housing developing, I guess new construction, has impacted inventory? Also, any insight on how the local market is or is not addressing the housing development issue?
Sure, happy to answer that. One of the myths about development is, and it's going on with recommended zoning changes in Montgomery County that the county council has talked about, is that the people who want to build things the developers are usually going to build something on which they can make the most profit. And that's usually not inexpensive starter housing or workforce housing. It's more expensive housing. So you don't see most of the time people invest in housing in the segment of the market that really needs the housing. Yeah. You don't. And so, for example, I live in Chevy Chase in Maryland, and if the zoning overlay they're talking about doing happened, they're saying, oh, well, you could take a person like me that has a house on a lot, small lot, maybe you could build 2 townhouses on that. That's true, but that's not what a developer would choose to do. They would make a McMansion on my lot because they'd make much more money on that. So what I think needs to happen is the government needs to find a way to subsidize and invest in housing for workforce housing, a much more affordable rate in places where there is land to do that, like White Flint Mall, Aspen Hill. There was a whole building there right by Home Depot, places like that where there is land that can be developed and can be made into housing that is affordable. Obviously, in the county there and DC and Virginia too, they make exceptions and will say, well, yeah, you can develop this 20-unit building here, but 4 of the units will be affordable housing. 4 units is not enough.
Right.
It's better than nothing, but this is all a money game, and it's all what a developer and business people will only invest where they can get a return. And without government having some kind of incentive for people to build workforce housing, it's not going to get built. It's not a zoning issue. It's that the government has to help people get a return on that. Otherwise, people will not build it. Members won't do it.
Yeah, and I know exactly kind of what areas you're talking about. Because I grew up in the Aspen Hill area, so you're probably talking about that old Vitro area where it used to be and everything. Yeah. Which I don't go down that way very often, but like, what's going on there? Is anything going on?
No, they tore the building down. I kept thinking, oh, it would make such a great homeless shelter or a great place they could turn into apartments. The trouble is a lot of the old commercial buildings can't be retrofitted, as you know, into housing because of the cement floors, and it's really hard to get utilities to each floor, and the windows don't open a lot of times. So it's more expensive to retrofit them than it is to tear them down. So most commercial space can't be turned into housing. Some can, but most cannot. It's prohibitively expensive. But if the government chose to subsidize it, and I'm not trying to say let's solve every problem with a government subsidy, but the economic facts are investors who will build things on which they can make money, and they can't make money on workforce housing the way they can by building a McMansion or a luxury townhouse.
Right.
It's just not going to happen naturally. It has to be assisted, I think. I don't know if I answered your question, Aaron.
No, I mean, I think that's a great question. And by the way, anybody else who's watching out there, please throw out your questions. Otherwise, I got to start spitballing this stuff. And, fortunately, Holly's just as good, if not better than I am at this stuff. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to go ahead and write them in, and we will do the best we can to answer them. And whatever we can't answer, the good news is I've got the magic 8-ball that will definitely come up with the right answer. So one way or another, we're going to get your freaking answer in. So, I guess just going back to the DMV market, really right now, once again, we're definitely seeing some softening in the marketplace, but nothing horrific that you're seeing.
There are segments of the DC market, like Southwest, the condo co-op market in Southwest DC, which you would think would be booming because of the waterfront, for some reason has been soft. It's better than it was last year, but a lot of those condos and co-ops just were sitting for a while, and it's largely because a lot of those buildings haven't been updated. Right. And when you have a condo, you could have the most beautiful condo inside, but if the lobby's out of date, the elevator's out of date, and everything like that's out of date, it makes people just feel like, oh. And a lot of the pandemic really damaged the condo market because people thought elevators had cooties. And so they wanted to just stop in shared living spaces were just not as popular. So meaning you have to go up the elevator with your neighbor. People became afraid. So I think it's softened the condo market in a way that I haven't seen a full recovery yet.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the things we talked about a few weeks ago is that, I think that condo market really hasn't fully recovered from the pandemic. When people were moving out and looking for more space and everything, and it just really hasn't fully recovered since then.
No, and it's a shame. I think with interest rates dropping and the expectation for the economy. Do you mind if I make a comment about that right now?
Please do.
Yeah, the thing that is really uncertain in the United States right now is tariffs, and tariffs. Donald Trump tells everyone he's putting them on. Then he says, just kidding. And then 2 days later, he puts on part of the tariff, and then he backs away from that. So it's a day by day tariff, trade war that he's involved in, or trade conversation anyway. And
I would say hour by hour.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. And so those things will impact the cost of living for regular Americans. And for some people, that will impact them in a great way because some things will be really very much more expensive. It certainly will impact construction costs, cost of lumber, steel, all those things. So I'm not an expert on the economy, but I do think from what I'm reading from people who seem to know, that are much smarter than I am, that we're headed for some sort of mini recession. I don't know how big it'll be, but what happens when people start hearing the talk about recession, you have to have 2 months of economic decline in a row to declare a recession. I don't think we've had that. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. The people start to get concerned. And what drives the real estate market is concern. And so consumer sentiment drives a lot of what happens in the real estate market. I've seen a market shift like that over consumer sentiment. And it's almost funny, and it's not really funny, but it's almost funny when you think of how did all those people change their mind at the exact same time, Yep. But elections are like that too. Most people think emotionally, not logically, and there's a little logic in there for sure, but most decisions are made with emotion. And I think when you know that about people, you can understand what's going on better.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because having done this as long as I have, I mean, I saw that happen I mean, when 9/11 occurred, I mean, we were in a booming 2000 market, and then, well into a booming market that had been going for about 18 months since the beginning of 2000. And then all of a sudden you have 9/11 and the market just went quiet and dormant until January of 2002, I should say. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's just like on with it again,
Crazy.
And even, hyper local to this area, I even saw the same darn thing happen for about a month when we had the DC sniper. I mean, people were afraid people were afraid to freaking, get gas in their car because people were getting shot around. I was
so afraid for my children. Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, I just remember it was like buyers are like, I'm not going out looking at houses with you. I mean, so you're right. I mean, there's things that can occur that can change things on a dime, but, and of course, people watching the stock markets too, the last 2 days have been horrible. So, but anyways, unless anybody, it looks like we have a few questions here.
Can I make a comment before you answer that one? I mean, ask me. I think that the speed at which the market can change course, which we were discussing, is fascinating. And one of the things that happened during COVID, the several years of COVID market activity where the market was just so hot and crazy busy, is that the seasonality of the market that we usually experience in our market, our geography, was flattened, and we just were busy every month. August, July, December, all the months when you usually have lower production, everybody was selling like crazy. I mean, people were exhausted, and so it's that seems to have gotten back on track, and now we have more slow time in December and more slow time in the summer. But for the longest time, we were flat. I mean, flat meaning racing all year.
Yeah. I mean, I always say there's definitely seasonality in the DMV market, and I always say that the first 2 quarters of any given year, whether you think that year is a great real estate year or not so great real estate year, or somewhere in between, typically are your first and second quarter. I mean, the spring market starts early, and then typically by the time we start seeing kids let out of school around mid-June or so, just like we see traffic on the street, or at rush hour slow down because people go on vacation, we kind of see the same foot traffic coming through houses to be the same. But yeah, you're right. For like 2 years, it was like freaking balls to the walls. It was like, forget seasonality. I mean, nobody was going to work. Everybody was staying at home. And it was just like, very little seasonality to anything.
And I think the conduct of people who are looking and not looking has to do with whether you're in a part of the market where most people have kids or most people don't have kids. Like you get the downtown DC condo market. Those are not people that generally worry about the school calendar. Yeah. However, they do go to the beach in the summer. And so it's just funny. You just have to know your market. I think it really matters if you know what the profile is of the buyer, meaning the way they might act.
So we got another question from Eric Maz. Eric is asking, are buyers and sellers apprehensive and waiting to see changes or stability because of the administration change?
I think they are. I think some are. Here's my thought on that. It's very hard. And from watching the market and buying investment property over the years and just being in the market for 41 years, which makes me just old, not smart. I think that it's very hard to time the market. If interest rates come down, and which they are, but who knows to where, right? They seem to be. How long? That's right. But if you get in a situation where you can buy and you can buy your first home, I think it's always better to get on that housing train and get into homeownership, because it's never easy to do for anyone. But if you can get on that train, it's a good idea. Some people get very, very reluctant and think, oh, this isn't the right time to buy. It's very hard to know what's the right time to buy. What you shouldn't do is buy something if you're going to hold on to it for a very short time, because 100%. Housing is not a short-term investment. So, if you're thinking, oh, housing prices are up and they might fall, you might go, yeah, but if I own it for 10 years, I'll be okay. And in most cases, that's true. Depends what it is and what, making sure you don't overpay for something. But I think people are showing a little reluctance now. And I think what I'm observing is more angst, more anxiety about what's the president going to do next? What's Elon Musk going to do next? a chainsaw last week. What's this week? So
Come on now, let's be fair. That was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. What?
It's a hatchet this week. It's a hatchet.
Yeah, of course. So I think people are uncertain, and we just don't have the stability in the government that we're used to having. So
right. So we're also getting another question. Lydia asks, how is technology changing the way brokers and agents do business? I think this is a good one, and I'd like to hear your point on it, and then I'll kind of chime in a little bit.
Okay. I'm not used to letting anyone let me go first. That's why I'm divorced twice. So, technology is changing everything. And when you can go into Chat GPT and pull up someone's name and it gives you their whole history, it's pretty freaky. So I think brokerages that have technology definitely and agents that have technology have an advantage over ones that don't. What we're seeing in the industry, and Kevin, you and I were talking about this before we came on, you're seeing consolidation in the industry because brokerages that are smaller or brokerages that can't afford to get the technology, which is incredibly expensive, are merging or being acquired by brokerages that are succeeding and do have technology. What can technology do for a home buyer or seller? It can give them data on just like some of that data you pulled up, Kevin. Kevin can get that very quickly. When I was selling back in the day, you couldn't pull that up. You had to crunch all the numbers yourself, but you can get that stuff very quickly, and it can really inform a buyer or a seller about the strength of that particular market, which should inform the nature of the offer you might make on that property or the offer you might accept if you're the seller. Like, do you have to accept a home inspection contingency? Yes, I do think everyone should get a home inspection. Let me be clear about that. I would have much less liability if everyone got one. So I'm a fan of home inspections, but it's a reality in the market. And so that's why you're seeing the changes and the mega aggregators. Do you want to talk about that, Kevin? And then I will too.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the big things that's kind of like inside the real estate business this week is and I'm going to pull up, let's see if I can pull this up. I'm going to pull up there we go. Can you see that?
No.
Okay. Well, hey.
There we go.
Oh, you saw it? Okay. Hold on one second.
Something's coming up there. Well, which one is it?
It's the Rocket.
Yeah. Rocket buying Redfin.
Yeah, Rocket buying Redfin, which is, I mean, look, I don't follow this stuff super close because I have enough just dealing with my own life and my clients and, what's going on. And once again, in our market, in this little world. But so I did not know this was coming. But, you got this, which just happened over the last few days. And then, of course, last week we heard that, that Keller Williams had sold a stake of their company to a private equity firm called Stone Point. And sounds to me like they're planning on going public at some point in time. So you're starting to see a lot of mergers, a lot of acquisition coming into the marketplace and everything. And what do you think that does for the market, especially, because you talked about, the advantages that some of these brokerages have, like Compass. And by the way, I mean, it's huge. The two biggest reasons I'm at Compass is because of culture, but also because of the technology that I lean into, like the CRM and the things. I mean, I lean into it every day. It really tells me what I'm supposed to be doing every day and helps me give, better, more sustainable, reliable service and data to my clients. So, enough of a pitch there for Compass. But, what do you see with some of these changes in the marketplace and the mergers and acquisitions?
Yeah. So what will Stone Point do with its investment in Keller Williams is the article that is appearing now. And what's happening is real estate brokerages largely don't have, it's a very thin profit business. And the people who are members of the public who are listening to this conversation right now, they probably find that hard to believe. But the truth of it is, brokerages don't make a lot of money. That doesn't mean, I'm not trying to get anyone to feel sorry for me. I don't own this brokerage, but I can tell you that it's a very slim profit margin. And you compound that nationally with the fact that brokerages that don't have any technology to offer their agents or their clients are at a complete disadvantage. You'll find parts of the country that it's not such a big issue, but most parts of the country now, people want their agent to be able to give them the information they need very quickly. So you'll see brokerages that just don't have the capital to create that technology, and they know it. So that's why companies merge and acquire each other. With Keller Williams, that is a way to get an infusion of money that they can use to enhance their offering to their agents and to the public. With Rocket Mortgage buying Redfin, that's actually a good marriage because Rocket Mortgage is an online mortgage platform. Redfin is an online real estate platform, a display platform. Redfin does have agents, but they've never been as accomplished at getting the traffic on their platform to actually give the business to the Redfin agents. So combining and that transaction, as you can see from the screen, if you're looking, was an all stock deal, which means Rocket Mortgage didn't give Redfin any money. They just traded, they just did stock, which means it's something that both platforms felt they needed, because Rocket Mortgage wants more eyeballs on their website, on their platform, so they can get more mortgage transactions, and Redfin wants more eyeballs on their website so they can get more real estate transactions. Right. The bigger thing, and I know I'm talking too much, but I'm almost done. The bigger thing that's going on in the industry is aggregators. So aggregators take all the data that's in the MLS and post it. Zillow is an aggregator. Zillow is worth more than all the real estate companies combined in the United States. Zillow takes all the data from all the people that work hard like you, Kevin, and takes all the data and posts it in one website. Redfin does that too, but they're a brokerage. Zillow is trying to be the portal for the future of real estate. Homes.com is also owned by CoStar, trying to be the portal for the future of real estate. Other brokerages are trying to do that. Compass is the #1 brokerage nationally, so I'm sure that we will be a one-stop shop location for all the inventory. But that's a huge technological race going on in our industry, right. And it's expensive to bring that technology to a brokerage. It's very expensive. I'm not whining about it. I'm just saying it's unachievable for most members of the brokerage industry.
Right. And so that's why you're starting to see these mergers, acquisitions, and things like that. It's to be able, it's once again, it's just a race for eyeballs and clicks and loyalty to the platform.
Yes.
Exactly. As well as, with a company like Keller, especially, who does have, seasoned agents for the most part, it offers their agents more as well. At least that's the goal.
What part of the market you're in with Keller Williams? Keller Williams, because it's a franchise, as this is true with any franchised brokerage, each franchise is very different. So some are a tiny player in the market, some are a large player in their market. It depends on what part of the United States you're in and what part they play. We have a really fierce philosophy at Compass about only having the best agents. Not every franchisor has that thought. So it's very different. Brokerages are very different. And I think one of the worst parts of the industry is that the public doesn't have a great way to know who's a really competent, smart agent and who's not so hot. And you can get some really bad advice when you market your house, and it can actually be really financially not good. Or you can be Kevin Grolig and take care of everyone.
As long as I bring my magic 8-ball with me. It's a little cumbersome,
Exactly.
It's not the highest tech, but you know what?
It's good.
So Chris Balto has a question. He says, how do you see these changes impacting real estate agents directly? More opportunities or more challenges?
I think there are always opportunities and challenges. I think for agents that, let me put it to you this way. Human beings, some people are really adverse to change. And then there are other people that are future thinkers. They're always thinking about what's next. People that think about the future. I am one of those people. Even if I'm driving my car, I'm thinking about where am I going to go next? How can I pick 5 things up on the way there? That's just how my brain works. I was terrible at history, so I just don't think backwards very well. But people that are backwards thinkers or present thinkers will have more trouble with all the changes in the industry. People that are lifelong learners, that just have a curious mind, that are able to learn, and everyone's got a different aptitude for that. Who embrace change and are comfortable with it, they will do much better than the people that really haven't had a new idea. And The other thing is some brokerages really aren't teaching their agents, in my opinion, what they need to be doing every day and how they need to stay really smart and give their clients great advice. And I'm seeing a divide in the industry between the agents that are really smart, I know I have to go, really.
No, you're good. We're
really
good. We're going to go over a little bit. So just,
But the agents that don't really have the emotional IQ or the compassion to care about their clients, and they care more about the transaction than the client, those agents are not thriving. And I think that is the way the industry is going. And I think that's actually a good thing. I don't wish any harm or will on anyone, but we take care of a lot of people who have it's usually their biggest investment. And we have to be very caring and careful. And you have to work to be smart. You have to be really smart and learn every day. And if you're an agent, and if you're not that person, you're not going to succeed as well as someone else who is.
Yeah. One thing that I've always said is, I still think that there's a place in this business, although that place is getting smaller and smaller, for that agent who, maybe has been in the business 20 years or so. Maybe they only want to do 5-10 transactions a year, right, and they only want to do it with their friends and their family and maybe their past clients. I still think there's a place in this business for good, hardworking people, to your point, who are honest and have integrity, who keep up on what's going on in the business, but maybe they're not that tech savvy. Like, I still think that there's place for that person in the business, but I think it's disappearing. But I've always said, because you and I have both seen a lot of the same thing. You see some people who are very good, they're very good high touch, but their tech side sucks. They have no tech. And then I've seen plenty of people who have high tech, but no touch.
That's exactly right.
I believe that ultimately, really what's most important is to have high touch.
That's right.
However, if you can fuse touch and tech together, I think you can be, unstoppable, because it just allows you, whether that be through video or through just, through a CRM that tells you what you should be doing every day.
Well, you can get someone else to do your tech.
People I should be reaching out. This is somebody's home anniversary today. Let me reach out to them. Oh, it's somebody's birthday today. Let me send them a card or a note or a video or something. So, when you can do those type of things and fuse high touch and high tech, I think that's once again, this wasn't really to pump Compass, but that's one of the things I love about the platform, is it allows me to kind of use my high touch skills, but to reach more people through the tech. Does that make sense?
I think the key for the future is having a strong emotional IQ and having compassion and empathy for others. And if you don't, and you're not kind, you're not going to make it. Because even if you're a tech Luddite, you can get someone else to do your tech work for you. You can always get someone else to help you with tech, like your teenage kid, right? But if you don't really care about someone, they will know, and you won't get a repeat business. And repeat business is what makes great agents do well. That's it right there. Yeah.
So Holly, we've got about another 10, 12 minutes to go. I'm not rushing or anything, but I did want to talk, because you brought up something early in the conversation about sales that occur that are not happening through the MLS. And so do you, with Compass, one of the things that we are very, very familiar with and well-versed is, the Compass private exclusives, or the Compass coming soon. And also, I don't know how much you want to get into this. And once again, I don't want to spend 30 minutes on it, but maybe a good 10 or 12 minutes on the, clear cooperation policy. So
Sure.
Once again, we're kind of nerding out here on real estate stuff here, but actually, why don't we just kind of talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that we're starting to find more and more frequently off market, that you won't find through the MLS, and you won't find it on Zillow, and you won't find it on Redfin or Homes or Realtor.com. So talk a little bit about some of those opportunities out there.
Yeah. So real estate brokerages across the country have always shared listings they have coming up. Properties are putting on the market. The agents at sales meetings have always shared them. That's gone on as long as I've been in the business. That happens at every brokerage. With technology, some brokerages, including Compass, have made a platform where they can share within their own brokerage listings that are coming onto the market. This enables buyers who are seeing them to get a heads up on things that are coming in the market, maybe even buy it before it hits the MLS. Some people will pay a premium for a property that's not in the MLS because they are afraid they're going to have to pay even more if it goes into the MLS, because they'll have competition. So the swifter the market is, and the more of a seller's market it is in the category that property is in, the more likely private exclusive will be attractive. But you just never know.
Right.
A lot of people will pay extra money for convenience. They just want to know they got the property and that's the one they want, and they will pay whatever they have to pay. For some people, money is not the main issue. It's convenience. So real estate brokerages have been doing that internally. The National Association of Realtors came out almost 5 years ago with a policy that said realtors cannot publicly market listings that are within their own brokerage at all. They can't publicly market them. All listings basically within 1 day had to go into the MLS. For some sellers who are very private or famous or have someone that's ill in their house or elderly or whatever, or young baby, someone immunocompromised. I mean, there are a million reasons where the house is a mess and they don't want to fix it up.
Especially during COVID,
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. So for some sellers, they didn't want their property in the MLS, but the National Association of Realtors forced brokerages to do that. I was not against that because I think home sellers deserve to have the choice about how their realtor markets their property, and they should be talking to their agent and deciding on their own. However, they pushed for that. At this time, there's a lot of pushback about that in the industry, and a lot of people are trying to get that rule overturned. The reason that rule got put in place is because some people in the higher ups, the National Association of Realtors, which is the wealthiest lobbying organization in the country, and NRA is the other wealthy one. They felt that realtors were trying to sell their own listings themselves. Any smart agent will tell you that they have much less liability if there's a buyer's agent on the other side of the transaction, and the seller has much less liability if the buyer's represented. So it's not that the agents never help a buyer on their own listing, but it's not very often if it's a highly competent, highly skilled agent. It does happen because some buyers say, I don't want someone else to represent me. I just don't.
Right.
But the view was that, agents are just trying to double dip and get both sides of the compensation.
Right.
That isn't what most agents do. Starving agents might do that, but not really fully successful full-time agents. So that's been going on in the industry. I don't know. So we've had roughly at the height of the market and during COVID, we had as much as 20% of the transactions off MLS. And we've seen that in our marketplace. Every brokerage does that. And it's just a fact. I think that if the NAR's clear cooperation policy that prevented agents from marketing their sellers' properties unless it was in the MLS, I think if that went away, you'd see a lot more brokerages post those listings on their websites publicly and enable the public to see more of those listings. So it's really not that policy was a service to the National Association of Realtors, not to the public. And it's a shame. That's my view.
Yeah. And what are some of the benefits, what are some of the benefits that, the sellers may have? I mean, I certainly understand,
Sure.
Now I have not been dealing with a lot of celebrity clients. Some of them are real big on Instagram, but, because they got like 500 followers like me or something, but not dealing with a lot of celebrities or whatever, but talk about like other reasons why people may want to try,
Sure.
And maybe this is not long term, maybe this is short term.
Right.
I have a lot of clients that short term, it's like, what, let me go ahead and test the market because
Right.
I want to see if the price that we're thinking about is going to work.
Resonates. Yeah.
And also without penalizing myself with
Right.
Trying this and then adding up days on market, which can be a killer to
Or a price reduction.
Or
Right.
a price reduction.
So for most people, putting their property in private exclusive, having their agent put it in a private exclusive setting where other agents within that brokerage can give feedback on it or go look at it, it can lead to an offer. But a seller never really has to take that offer, but they can think about it. Then the property could be placed publicly on that brokerage's website, like Compass's, on our website. and you can get feedback from other agents, but you also own the narrative of how it appears in a Google search. And it's not just going to be a Zillow lead, where if a member of the public goes on Zillow and then clicks the button to talk to an agent, they're going to get an agent that pays for Zillow leads.
Right.
And that's usually not an agent that's built a relationship business. It's an agent who's buying leads. So
Right.
that's okay. Some, good agents do that too. But there's no obligation to sell a property in private exclusive or coming soon, or to, once you put it in the MLS, you hope you're planning to sell it, but there's no obligation to sell it. You're really just getting feedback on the market. We've found that property that's had this runway of triple launch actually have less days on the market and a higher sale price. Yeah. You will see sometimes that a seller will get a really attractive offer up front in private exclusive, not in the MLS. And there is a scarcity mindset that is an exclusivity that attracts some buyers. It's why when you go to, I don't know, what kind of handbag, Chanel handbag or some kind of fancy handbag, you go in the store, the best ones are in the back. They're not on a website. They don't sell those kinds of $10,000 purses on the website. They're exclusive and you have to have access to them. So the whole idea of not posting everything like Amazon, like it's on Amazon,
right,
can actually jack the price up in the mind of the value up in the eye of the buyer.
Right. And
you just have to, you can test it and see. There's not really any harm to it. But also some people have a really messy house. They have toddlers. They don't want their house marketed. They want 50 million people through. And if they get lucky on private exclusive and someone really wants their house and they'll pay, then they don't have to paint it. They don't have to do anything. So right. It's just a matter of what they want.
Yeah. I mean, I've had sellers who, let's be honest, just their motivation level wasn't the highest. It's kind of like, you know what? Hey, I wasn't really planning on selling right now. I don't really care to go through the hassle. I don't want a lockbox on my house. I don't want a sign in my yard. However, if we can get this price, mm-hmm. I'm out. Yeah, I'll sign it. I'm done. Like there are home owners out there like that, where, and once again, as an agent, you kind of have to be smart on and make good business decisions on who you say yes and who you say no to as well. But, oftentimes, what I see is I see with a lot of my clients, I pitch it to every one of them because I want to give them every opportunity to, test the market, to potentially sell at the highest possible price possible, the best possible terms. And a lot of times what I find is, what we'll do is we'll price it at a point where it's like, guys, this has to be a price that if you get it, if somebody gives it to you and assuming that they're well qualified and they, and everything else within all the other terms of the contract work for you, that you're content knowing, you know what? Hey, I'm good not going on the market. Like this is a bonus. I didn't have to go through all the bull crap that, and let's call it what it is. A lot of it's crap that you have to go through the home sell. It's painful, the lack of privacy, all those things. You know what? If I can sell it at this price without having to go through what my neighbors and everybody else I've ever heard who's had to sell a house had to go through, this is a win for me, but it has to be a price that, if you get it, you never second guess yourselves.
Right.
And as heck, don't second guess me because then they'll probably be calling you.
Of course.
So, you never went on the market,
just call Kevin. But a lot of times people don't want their house. They don't want their neighbors to know they're moving. True. And they'll only move if they can do it privately. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But not just divorce, but lots of reasons. And some people don't. We've sold properties for people that work for the CIA, FBI. They just don't want people in their house. And I tell agents all the time, you go with a buyer and look at a house, you better not touch anything because people have cameras everywhere. Yeah. And even though in most cases they're supposed to disclose them, they don't. And you can't be looking through stuff. Right. So
the last question I have is, some of the pushback that we get with private exclusive and, not, selling off market comes from our MLS company, Bright mm-hmm. MLS, which,
right.
Of course, when we put a property in a market, we have to have, I think it's now 2 Bright forms that are filled out. And of course, Bright states that, by not going on the market, how you're limiting the amount of buyers and study, that you'll sell for much less and blah, 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 blah. I mean, what would your rebuttal to that be?
So I've read the entire Bright study that was evaluating that issue, and it excluded a lot of properties. It was rather arbitrary, and it was such a complicated algorithm that they used to evaluate what is very simple that I think their study's flawed. I've told them that. I've discussed that with them. The only way to really know whether a property sold for the same price off Bright as it would have sold for on Bright, or higher or lower, is if you sold the same exact property at the same exact time
Right.
twice. And
Right.
you can't do that. So there frankly is no data to prove that, unless you might have two condos side by side that went on the market on the same day that are identical 1-bedroom units or something. But there isn't data like that. No one checks the public record for what did this 1-bedroom condo sell for that never went into Bright compared to one that sold the exact same day in Bright MLS. So or in or off, you know what I mean? So there is no data to prove that, and there can't be data to prove that for the reason I just shared. So
Right.
it's I think it's a matter of choice, and that homeowners should do what they want.
Right.
And whatever feels right for them. And I think our job is to give them all the options, tell them all options are not evenly weighted. There are pros and cons to every decision you make, and sometimes some things are more important than other things, and that's
Right.
a realtor's job, is to explain that.
Right. Should I maybe kind of help Bright out by, the next time I have a property, try selling it, the same property, both on and off market at the same time, and see what happens there, so we
Right,
can.
right. Good
Probably
luck.
not a good idea.
Yeah.
You'll be getting a call.
Just don't get 2 contracts on it. No.
Right.
No.
Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody who's watched this as guests. And by the way, so this is going to be replayed on YouTube. So if anybody watches this after the fact, well, hell, I know people are going to be watching this after the fact. For those of you who are watching this after the live presentation, if you have any questions for Holly or me, feel free to send them to me. If it's a question that I can't answer, I'll let Holly know, and I'll get back to you, or I'll do the magic 8-ball or something. But anyways, Holly, appreciate your time and everything. And this was fun. Maybe you'll do it again. Maybe quarterly we can have an.
I'm only doing it naked. That's it. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. It was a pleasure, Kevin. Thank you so much. And you're just so full of energy. I'm grateful.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you and what you do and your advocacy for us as agents, but also for our clients. So, when I heard some of the stories that you talked about a few weeks ago, I'm like, first of all, thank God I haven't had to be involved with any of those. But you know what? Guess what? You're doing this long enough. Your time's coming at some point. So just to hear kind of what you do, that, by the way, not going to mention any other brokerages that I know wouldn't be done at other brokerages. That's pretty phenomenal.
And yeah, it's true.
And once again, I'm not trying to, this isn't about all pumping up Compass, but it is a very agent centric company, because I believe their belief is if we take care of the agents and get the best high culture, with agents, ethical, they're going to take care of the client.
Oh, we all share. So you all are smarter. No one is as smart as, no one person is as smart as all of us. And we all collaborate and share. And that's unusual. And that's why we all are smarter. You get smarter by listening. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to, we're going to sign out right now. But so I wanted to let everybody know that, first of all, thanks for checking everything out. Once again, if you're watching this on replay, feel free to ask questions to me, to Holly. I'll pass anything along to her that I can't figure out myself. And also, if you're thinking about buying or selling real estate, or you just have a question about real estate, I've got this link or this QR code to the Calendly link where you can go ahead and scan that, and it'll go ahead and take you to my Calendly link, where you can go ahead and place a time in there where we can talk one-on-one about your situation, whether it be buying, selling, what the hell to do with all this Doge mess, where do I see things going. Once again, I might need to bring in the magic 8-ball, but go ahead and click on that Calendly link. We can set up a 15 to 30-minute conversation, a virtual a meeting and everything. And also, if you're watching this from outside of the DMV, because once again, I'm licensed in Maryland and Virginia, but if you're watching this from outside the area, you're thinking about buying, or you're thinking about selling real estate, or if, once again, you just have questions, the best thing you can really do is hire or talk to a great agent. and I didn't say this with Holly on here, but I think she would agree with me. She probably, actually, she's not more tactful than I am. She's probably less tactful than I am. But I've always said in many of my videos that I think 80% of the real estate agents out there really suck, and 20% are really very good. And so the chances are, if you're outside of the area and you're thinking about buying or selling real estate, or you just have questions, and if you don't know of somebody that is really good, the chances are, if you're just looking people up online, the chances are 80% they're going to suck. So if you're looking for a good referral, I network with some of the top agents throughout the country. Go ahead and scan that referral QR code. It'll take you to my website. Just fill out a little bit of information. I'll get in touch with you. Don't worry, won't stalk you too much. And then we can talk a little bit about what you're looking for, and I can help you find a really great agent in your area that can help you out. So anyways, everybody, thanks once again for checking this out Tuesday night, and it's crazy in the DMV, but we're going to keep you updated on everything that goes on as it happens. So thanks once again, everybody. Peace.